In the year 2010, there was an earthquake in Haiti, and it was a devastating quake, and it hadn't happened in many decades, and it took the lives of well over 200,000 people. And at that time, for the first time, I was made aware by my Stellan friends that earthquake was man-made. And that made the tragedy even worse, because it was not, quote unquote, natural. And from that point, I began to speak out about the availability and the deployment of weather weapons. From that time, from 2010, so this year is 2013. So 13 years I have been speaking up about these climate weapons, that they are being deployed, they are in position around the earth in the hands of the most powerful, and they are being deployed selectively, strategically, to cause catastrophic damage to the planet, to regions on the planet, and to claim hundreds of thousands of lives, both in the strategic interest of whoever owns them, whether it's a territorial interest, whether it's a military interest, or whether it's a negotiation tactic when the other side is not listening, to show a little force. And I even wrote a book about it. I even wrote a book in 2014. In 2014, there was the incident of the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 that took off from Kuala Lumpur and then virtually disappeared, taking 239 passengers with it. And I began to follow that and document that. And around that time, in that year, in the surrounding months, there were a number of either weather events or earthquakes that coincided with a negotiation between America and Russia. So I documented the flight of Malaysian Airlines 370, and I documented the anomalous, what I called anomalous earthquakes, weather catastrophes, etc. And in that, I had two versions of that book. Two versions. One was why the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappeared, and the other version was called World War C, because as my research and evidence and analysis, even though it is speculative, it showed that the tension between America and Russia at that time was prevalent, and that there were the deployment of these weather weapons. And I categorized the significant events, the number of events that have occurred. For example, the earthquake in Japan. There's the earthquake in Japan. There was the earthquake in Chile. There was the tsunami. Remember the tsunami in Indonesia? That was before 2010, 2004 or 6. There's a number of these. There's a number of these events. Now, as the years moved on, we've seen these summertime. We've seen these wildfires. There was the Camp Fire in California. Cities were razed. There was a wildfire here in Canada. I'm forgetting the name, but there was an entire city in Canada that was razed by the wildfire. And we're in the middle of summer. And guess what? Wildfires. One of the most catastrophic events in America is taking place right now in Hawaii, where wildfires have claimed not only lives, but they've razed cities. Raised cities. And the issue with these climate weapons, weather weapons, is that it's hard to get the evidence because they're up there in the upper atmosphere or the lower atmosphere or the low Earth orbit, wherever they are. It's hard to get that evidence. And if I did have that evidence, I wouldn't be making this video. So the evidence, sort of the pictures, are hard to get. And there's no whistleblower. Again, this thing is big. It's big. Now, but we have evidence in terms of the circumstantial evidence, sort of the nature of the damage. We can examine the damage, right? We can examine the damage. And we can examine the behavior of the leadership. So what am I talking about here? So what happened in early 2006? If you recall, in early 2006 is really when the global warming threat became a reality, right? In 2006, that's when the global threat of climate change, later called climate change, initially called the global warming. Prior to that, it was a global cooling. That didn't pan out, so they called it global warming. And that didn't pan out because then it became cold again. And then there were these earthquakes, and then there were these tsunamis, and then there were these hurricanes and wildfires. So then they said it's climate change. We don't know what it is, but the climate is changing. But understand where I'm coming from is, when I did the research, I discovered that there's a weather war between the major nations, America and Russia, and possibly there is a third party that is not a nation, but maybe a rogue state. That's my theory. It's a theory. That's my theory. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it based on my research. We're seeing more and more So I've been speaking about this for a long time, but we're seeing more and more of these signatures, right? When you drop an atomic bomb, like they did on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we can see not only the mushroom cloud, but we see the devastation. And you have the presence of, there's radiation, there's radioactive fallout, and the way that people are injured, those injuries are connected, right? We can say, even if we didn't see the bomb drop, we can say, well, there's radioactive fallout, there's radiation, the buildings have been destroyed, the people are dead from a gamma radiation exposure, they're sick. We can say, without seeing the bomb, an investigator can say this is the result of an atomic bomb, because they have that skill. What I'm saying is we can see the signature of these events, of certain key events, and say, maybe not 100% accuracy, but they are the result of the deployment of a climate weapon. And it is a strange thing to say, because there's no information that this is beyond top secret. There's no information. But we know from the 60s and 70s that there was this race to weaponize space. Dr. von Braun stated that emphatically, that they're going to weaponize space. That was the fear. And we know that in the early 80s, under the Strategic Defense Initiative in the States, they launched this Star Wars program in the early 80s, 1982, 83. So although not saying that it's a weaponization of space, we know that there is a fear. There's always been a fear that someone will put nuclear weapons in space, and maybe they are there anyway, and they could launch them at any target in a very short period of time. And then you have all these shields, right? You have these shields, ballistic shields, strategic defense initiatives, because of that. So what I'm saying is that in addition to those actions, those military actions, there are climate weapons. Climate weapons can be deployed. It can be some kind of electromagnetic or scalar weapon that can impact the Earth and can set off an earthquake, a volcano, can turn a hurricane category 1 to a hurricane category 5, can stir up a tsunami, can stir up typhoon winds. And I also show some evidence of that in my book, where the head of the Department of Defense says, we are concerned about eco-terrorism. Eco-terrorists, these are the quotes, eco-terrorists are using earthquake weapons. That's there. This is 10 years ago. But now we're seeing more and more evidence as the years go by that there is some kind of ongoing weather war. Now, why is a weather war good? Because a weather war is better than a nuclear war. But there are there are international treaties, there are peace accords. You cannot use nuclear weapons. Like it's a high crime. And you will be condemned. So there's nothing stopping people from using weather weapons. So why are they good? Because they're not using nuclear weapons. The threat has always been there's going to be a nuclear war and we're all going to die. Right? Someone's going to launch it. The AI program's going to launch it. A rogue state will get a nuclear weapon, a dirty bomb. And that is the big threat. But the ongoing war is weather. So we're not seeing the weather as a war because we're afraid of the nuclear war. So that's kind of the, what do you call that, dialect? The Hegelian dialect. Get them thinking about nuclear war. Oh my gosh. Those are powerful weapons. And then you got an earthquake, you got a hurricane, you got wood fires, right? You're taking out you're taking out cities. They took out the whole island. And it's not against the law, because I'm not sure, but I don't think it's against, there's no treaty. There's a treaty, a space-based weapon could be sending missiles. But is there a treaty or an accord to say you can't use weather weapons? You can't set off an earthquake. They can superheat a volcano over a period of weeks, right? You have to superheat it with these electromagnetic or scalar energy, whatever they're using, and then it sets off the volcano. It prematurely erupts. They could do the same thing to the tectonic plates. You disturb them enough, and they shift. And the shift causes a whole village and thousands of people to die. So the issue with the disadvantage of a weather weapon is there are two. One, you don't want to be discovered. You cannot make it obvious, right? So you can't have a wood fire in the winter, as an example. If you have a wood fire in the winter, people say, well, that's obviously man-made. But if you work within the seasons, right? So you can have in the winter, you can have a polar storm. And even now in the news, in the winter, they'll say it's a polar bomb. The climatologists they cannot, I have to explain this in a way. It's like, you cannot go on television and say that there are weather weapons or that's man-made. You cannot say that. You will be, first of all, you will be cut off. Second of all, you will be fired. Third of all, your life will end. So you cannot say that. But so you can say polar bomb. I can say climate bomb because I'm a nobody. I have very little influence, right? I could say climate bomb. I could say climate weapon. I don't have enough evidence to substantiate it, so I can get away with it. But you can't do it if you're someone who's respected on television and influential. In the news, you can't say that. You have to have a lot of evidence. By the time you get the evidence, you'll have a car accident, it'll be over. So I have an advantage because I'm a nobody. It's a theory, yeah. He's a theorist. So you need to work within the seasons. So you can have so the weather in the winter is cold, and you're gonna make it colder. There's a cold front, you're gonna make it a polar vortex. In the summer, it's hot, so the wood is dry, the trees are dry. You can create a fire by making it hotter, and then you can stir up a wind. So you can stir up a typhoon, and you got the fire. And what do you got? massive wood fire that's out of control. It's not difficult. And it's all looks natural. That's the key. Now, if you drop a nuclear bomb on Hawaii, it looks like a terrible, terrible event. You just murdered people. If you drop bombs, it's war, and the world will go to war. That will be a war, right? It's like Pearl Harbor, right? Because it's a bomb. But if it's a weather, we don't know if it was enhanced. We don't know if it's enhanced, if it was kind of pushed, if the winds were a little stronger than usual. And neither do we have the time to analyze it because we're busy saving lives. And neither do we have those resources that we can say, is it natural or artificial? Because we don't have that thinking. And that's why I've been talking now for 13 years and saying, is it natural? And I ask people, is it natural? Is it artificial? And I give them some clues. Artificial, usually there's a higher death count. There's catastrophic damage. The village or city is razed. And then in the news it's saying, this is the worst event ever. We've never seen this before in history. Right? When they start saying that, that's usually a artificial or artificially inspired. Again, remember, there's a wood fire, right? There's a wood fire, and then we kind of make it a little hotter, so the fire gets hotter, and then we stir up a little extra wind, so the fire goes out of control. Where's the law? Where's the law in that? We don't even know. We're not even aware of those things. So we think it's a freak storm, it's a freak accident, it's unnatural, it's a catastrophe, it's the worst tragedy. So I'm here to raise awareness to say, is it artificial? Is it natural? And when you go through the series of events over the last 20 years, there are a number of them that stand out. And we should be aware of that. So I'm not saying every natural disaster is artificial. I'm saying that some of them are, or they're induced. Some of them can be induced. That there was a dormant volcano that suddenly, for no reason, came to life. And we should be aware of these things. That's all I'm saying. You're not going to be able to stop it. I will not have those pictures of those things, because if I did, I could not make a video. But be aware that there's two types of disasters. There's a natural disaster, and then there's an artificial disaster. And these people are very good at kind of confusing the issue. Now, you're going to ask me, well, with all this going on, wouldn't it be obvious? Now, you forgot the key. You forgot what do you call this? The driving force of why no one notices. Why does nobody notice? Why does nobody notice what I'm saying? We go back to what we said earlier. In 2006, climate change. Why is there a polar bomb? Climate change. Why are these wood fires out of control? Climate change. Why was that earthquake so devastating? Climate change. Why is that hurricane slamming into the coast, did billions of dollars of destruction? Climate change. Typhoons, climate change. Any big disaster, weather disaster, climate change. Now you're thinking about climate change, you're not thinking about climate weapon. You're not thinking about the weather war between major nations. It's called the cover story. Cover it up. Climate change. People are like, oh my God, how did that happen? Climate change. What is climate change? Mankind is causing these weather anomalies because of the overproduction of carbon and other elements that are causing the atmosphere to have a bad day. So climate change, now understand the cover story and the narrative. Climate change is your fault. That earthquake is your fault. That volcano is the wood fire is your fault. You caused it because you're producing too much carbon. You're a bad person. Human beings are at fault. We must stop producing carbon. We must adopt these new initiatives. We must change the policy. Right? Now, if you're thinking about that, you're not thinking about climate weapons. I can tell you this, most of the world, 99% of the people are thinking about climate change. That's the cover story. That will not change. They're going to keep that tight. Now, if you want to get out of that, you got to fight climate change, right? No, but it's not real. They got more evidence, more scientists. We'll send teenagers out there to go after you. So you're going to spend years fighting climate change. You're never going to get to what I'm saying. But I understand, because if there's a weather war and there's all kinds of, these guys are sending earthquakes to each other and storms and hurricanes and wood fires, wildfires. We got to cover it up somehow. Like we can't expose this fact. We can't. I understand that. I do. I understand that. Because humanity would go nuts. Humanity, we want answers. Like the UFO cover-up has been for decades. The government has denied it since the 50s, right? Late 40s. 75, 80 years of denial. Right? And in recent months, they've gone to Congress, whistleblowers, and have stated emphatically, with evidence and witnesses, there's a lot going on, and it's concrete evidence, and a lot of it's covered up. So I don't anticipate that it will be different with this, that in decades from now, we will discover, we will validate that what I'm saying was fairly correct. Today they will call me names because I can't get the evidence. I'm not connected to anybody. I have no government source. I'm a theorist. I'm a rogue theorist. That's what I am. And I'm here to share this knowledge with you, and hopefully that you start to see those signs, as I've said. Because, a lot of this climate paranoia is basically saying the world's going to end, right? Which is not. It's not going to end. The world doesn't end, okay? And I have historical evidence that the 200,000 years of human history, the world has not ended. And there's been plenty of prophecies the world will end. And the prophets have been some of the best. Some of the best prophets have said the world will end, and it's not ended. Today it's the scientists who are saying the world's going to end. The world will not end. The world does not end. It cannot end. Okay? So do not believe this garbage. Do not believe that the world will not end. Yes, there will be catastrophes. Yes, look after yourself, because they could send an earthquake to your city and you got to run. Yes, you could get caught in a wildfire. Yes, but it's not at the end of the world. It's not a sign of the end of the world. It looks like it, right? If you look at it on television, the whole countryside's on fire. But that's what they want. They want to terrify people. They want to scare people. That's their job. That's their job. I understand that. But your job is to say, stay calm. Your job is to stay calm and say, the world's not going to end. It is a catastrophe. I'm going to take care of myself and my family, but I'm not going to go further than that and think the world's going to end. I'm not going to send all my money to climate change. I'm not going to buy an electric vehicle, right? If I buy an electric vehicle, it's going to save the world. I got to spend $60,000 to buy an electric vehicle because I think that buying an electric vehicle will lower the carbon footprint and I will save the world. But you won't save the world, because the world cannot be saved, because the world will not end. I will challenge anybody. I would say in the future, the world will not end, ever. The world will not end, ever. I will challenge anybody, and will put your money down, and you tell me when it will end, and I will tell you it will not end, because it doesn't end. But people believe that, because they're like, oh my God, oh, that's the fire and the earthquake. We're all going to die. We're not going to die. Forget about it. Again, if there's a catastrophe, run for safety. But don't go beyond that. Buying an electric vehicle is a nice choice. They're nice. They're nice vehicles. I don't have one because I don't have $60,000. They're nice. They're interesting. They're nice. But they're not going to save the world, A. B, we don't have the electrical infrastructure to power all these electric vehicles. Now, the car companies are saying everything's going to go electric by 2030. Or it's 50% electric. Yeah, 50% electric by 2025, 100% electric by 2030. But the electrical infrastructure will not be there. Why? Because people have a certain amount of money and have a certain amount of tolerance. You can't change things too fast for society. Even if you're scaring them to death that the world is going to end, I'm still not going to shell out $60,000 for an electric vehicle. And even if I shell out $60,000, there's nowhere to charge up my vehicle. There's not enough charging stations. I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck because they can only go 300 miles. So what if I go over here? I got no charging station. What if I go over there? There's no charging station. The other issue is, if you make all these electric vehicles and you build all of the infrastructure to charge vehicles, the drain on the electrical grid will be so hard. The drain on the electrical grid will be so high and so heavy, you will cause blackouts. So they're not telling you about that. There will be sequential blackouts. There will be regions of your city that will be electrical blackout because the demand is too high for electricity. And you can see this in South Africa. They have these sequential blackouts because the system can't handle the electrical demand. So imagine everything goes electric. Your cars are all electric. Now you're going through blackout. The whole city could go blackout. What will you say then, right? We rushed the infrastructure. We forced cars down people's throats. And now we got electrical blackouts. Now people are going to say, well, you promised if I did this, I would save the world. And now we did this, and now you've turned off all my power. So we have to be careful not to rush. The climate change paranoia is forcing people to rush. It's forcing the government, because the people now, the radical environmentalists go, well, the earth is going to die, the earth is going to explode, you got to change the policy. And the government's, oh my God, well, okay, 2035, we're going to go totally electric. We're going to be carbon neutral. We're going to be clean electricity. But that's not feasible, because human beings, we don't have the money or the resources or the tolerance to change that fast. Buying a $60,000 car for an average person, they're going to pay that for 20 years. They're going to be in debt for 20 years. Why? And then if you go back to my argument, does it save the planet? No, because the planet doesn't need saving. The planet doesn't need saving, because the planet is fine. It's these climate weapons that they need to be exposed. We need to understand what's going on. We need transparency. We need exposure. We need somebody to come down and say, stop doing it. We need that. I don't know when we're going to get that, but we need that. And I could see the same thing as the UFO cover-up. It would take decades. And many lives have been lost in that UFO. People's lives have been ruined, lost, marriages destroyed for decades, right? People called names, their reputation sabotaged. And they were right. So what's the solution? The solution is stay calm. The world will not end. Buying an electric vehicle is a nice idea, and if you want to buy one, buy it, but you will not save the world, because the world will not end. The environment will not collapse. Go outside, take a look. Go outside, go to the forest, go to the lake. It looks pretty good. Look behind me. Look, the earth is pretty good. Look, it's nice and green. The soil is brown. The leaves are green, the trees are green. If the soil is yellow and the leaves are purple, then we have a problem. Then I would say, okay, we're in trouble. So stay calm. Try to notice that when there's an event, a terrible event, we sympathize, empathize, help out if you can, and try to differentiate, to discern, is it artificial or is it natural? Is there a high body count? Is it a historical event, right? Is it all over the news? Does it look terrible? The images, is the whole city razed to the floor? Because, in the past, you'd have to drop a nuclear bomb to do that level of damage. Now you can do a climate bomb and do the same level of damage with no nuclear fallout. It's better. I don't violate any treaty. I don't violate any. There's not going to be a sort of a military war, and we can blame it on the environment, and we got that all covered up by climate change. For the globalists, it's a win-win situation. For people, we're screwed, because lives are being lost. But the advantage is there's no nuclear fallout. There's no nuclear Armageddon. They've kind of found a way to avoid nuclear Armageddon and still have these warring nations, right? If two nations are negotiating about something, and then there's an earthquake, you can say that could be part of the negotiation process. So it's complicated. It won't be over for a while, a long time. So all we can do is sort of manage our reaction and not to jump to conclusions, It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Yes, we can improve. Yes, we can do better. But, if we're gonna build the electrical infrastructure, We can't do it in 10 years or by 2030 or by 2035, which is 10 years, 10, 12 years. You can't do it, not reasonably, not without causing blackouts, which put more stress on society. But let's say 2050, 2060, so 30, 40 years, we can build better infrastructure, clean electricity, and all of that. And my advice to car companies is don't kill all of your V8s.